Hello, and thank you all for joining us today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Paula Mostafa, and I'm a Senior Consultant here at CBIZ. Now, we decided to have this presentation today because over the past few months, as we've become more familiar with the added features in GP's latest releases, we've realized that every one of our clients can probably benefit from many of those features. And we wanted to make sure that you were all aware of what those are. Now, as your GP partner, we'd like to make sure that you're getting the most out of your investment in GP. So we wanted you to be aware of GP's new release roadmap. Now, as you can see from this roadmap, a number of enhancements have been added to GP since last year, and Microsoft has many more already planned for releases in the years to come. In the GP 2015 release, Microsoft made improvements to, first, the system, by improving the service-based architecture. What this means is that system implementers and IT managers who deploy GP for the cloud are able to do so with greater efficiency and flexibility. Adding the ability to copy homepage user settings, which I'll show you a little later on, in a little bit. Adding new options that help integrate Manager Reporter with GP, similar to the way it was done before with FRX. And substantial improvements have been made to the workflow functionality in GP, and I'll demonstrate that as well. Now, improvements have also been made to the web client, and those include the addition of invoicing in the web client, as well as Canadian payroll is now available as well for those of you who use payroll, the payroll module for Canadian payroll. In business intelligence, improvements are made to the business analyzer tool, and there's also the addition of the ability to create your own Excel refreshable reports using a smart list builder. And I'll show you how to do that as well. And the financial module saw improvements in intercompany functionality. One of my personal favorites, the copying and pasting of journal entry details from Excel into GP, and payment terms. Now, while seeing the addition there's also the addition to fixed assets and fixed asset year-end reports. There weren't, in the past, the reports for the year-end close on the fixed asset module weren't quite as good as they are now. And I'll just touch on that a little bit later. Now, there's also the ability to edit emails for historical statements and payables remittances as well. On the distribution modules, we now have the ability to edit emails for historical documents in sales and purchasing. Now, another thing that's actually pretty cool now is that you can see a warning if you actually try to enter an invoice in the payable transaction window, that for a vendor that has an open purchase order, you will receive a warning so that you can actually go to another window and see what invoices are out there, and you can enter what open POs are available for that vendor, and you can, so then you can choose to actually receive and match off of the PO versus just entering that invoice in the payables transaction window. And I'll show you how that looks a little later on. Then in the latest release to GP 2015, which is R2, that brought us features such as the all-in-one doc viewer, AP invoice approvals using GP workflows, a time management app for those of you using human resources modules, automated provisioning for Azure, and a number of additional features requested by customers. Now, coming in 2016 and beyond, Microsoft is looking to continue to enhance GP by enhancing the web client, additional workflows, cloud deployment, and more. And again, more of the features that customers like you continue to request. Now, since Microsoft is releasing enhancements to GP regularly, we don't typically encourage clients to upgrade to the latest version of GP unless there's a new feature that they can really benefit from. Now, as you can see from this roadmap, however, it does appear that this may be a good time to consider an upgrade. Now, there are too many new enhancements for me to show you during our session today, but I will show you some of the ones that I think you'll appreciate the most. First of all, system-wide, there are a few additions. One of them is the homepage copy feature. Now, the homepage in GP offers users an opportunity to customize their GP experience so they can see reminders and tasks and give them the key information they need every day. They can see a list of preferred reports and quick links to those windows that they use regularly. Now, the problem is that not every user sets up their homepage. With the ability to copy the homepage setup by other users, system administrators can copy and share homepage settings between users. So if somebody knows how to, has figured out the best way to set up their homepage, and they have just the right reports on there and the right quick links, and their life is a lot easier because they're using their homepage, the administrator can go in and actually copy that homepage to the other users. I know I have had clients in the past that wish they could do that, so that option is now available. Now, in order to turn this feature on, it's really quite simple. The system administrator simply needs to go to the user setup window, select copy settings up at the top here, and then select the user to copy the settings from. So they would enter the user here and then turn on what it is, or rather click off whatever it is that you'd like to copy onto the new user. Now, navigation to Management Reporter. The integration of Management Reporter with GP brings back the ability that you had to run financial statements from within GP that you had with FRX in the past, for those of you who have been using GP for a while. Now, this new functionality eliminates the need to open Management Reporter in order to simply run a report. So now you can go to Administration and select Management Reporter Reports over here at the left, and you'll be able to view, edit, and create Management Reporter actions from within GP. Now, in order to turn on this option, because of course once you do upgrade, a lot of these features don't simply turn on just in case you don't want to use them. So in order to turn this on, you're going to go into the company setup options, and you can control that by simply checking it off at the bottom of the screen. Now, if you notice, you are able to enable the general ledger reporting, and if you happen to have analytical accounting, you would want to enable that as well. Now, workflows. While workflows have been available in GP for a while, Microsoft has made some significant improvements in this area, especially with the addition of the payable transaction approval, the ability to attach documents to the workflow, and the ability for users to approve documents directly from their emails. Now, let's take a closer look at these workflows. Now, starting in GP 2013, like I said, there were quite a few workflows already for purchasing, purchase order approval, so you can actually submit purchase orders for approval. And the way that these are submitted, just so that you understand how that works, is that somebody creates one of these transactions, whether it's a purchase order, a payable transaction, whatever it may be, and there's actually a submit button. They click on that and it's submitted. When it's submitted, the individual who it's been submitted to will receive an email letting them know that they have that, that they have something to approve, and they can choose to approve and reject. Now, in the past, they can only do that by logging into GP. Now, if you have the system set up properly, or to do so, you would be able to actually click on something on that email in order to approve the invoice or the purchase order, whatever it may be. And the original submitter will receive notification of that. And I'll actually show you how that works with the payables window. But in the past, like I said, the purchase order approvals were there, purchase requisitions, payroll, you could approve these. In GP 2015, there were quite a few more added, like the general ledger batch. So if you, in your organization, you have the accountants create a bunch of journal entries, and then somebody needs to approve them as a second level of review, everything can be entered into a batch, and whoever's supposed to review that batch can go ahead and review it and actually mark it approved. And you'll have that history in GP that the items were reviewed and were approved by a second individual. So you have workflows for the receivables batches, for the payables, rather in 2015 there was the payables batch approval. Now you have the actual payables transaction approval. So you can submit payroll documents as well as any expense reports in the project module. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what that looks like. And so I'm going to go into GP. Now, when I go into GP, I can come into, and again, you need to be an administrator in order to do this, or have security rights to do this. So you would want to go to Dynamics GP, Tools, Setup, Company, and then you have Workflows down here. We want to go to Workflow Maintenance. And this is a list of some of those workflows that are available. Now, I selected Payables Transaction Approval. It's one of the latest ones. And I created an actual workflow. You can actually see all of its components. Now, the way that this workflow was set up, I called it Payables Transaction Approval. And I actually want 2 levels of review, or 2 possible levels. The first one is the first approver. And this one is always going to have to approve the invoices. So anytime you enter an invoice, you submit it, the first person will actually have to approve it. Now you can assign as many individuals as you like, so you can have as many steps with different individuals assigned to them as you like. Then I also have a second one, and in this one, I'm actually requiring a second or final approval for any invoices that are over $5,000. So some of the additional options you have are to send notifications for completed actions, which would mean that the person who's submitting the invoice for approval or whatever document you're using in the workflow for would actually receive an email letting them know that it has been approved. The ability for an approver to delegate the task, which means that if you're not going to be in the office or you want somebody else to review an invoice that's been submitted to you, you can actually forward it to someone else. Excuse me. The ability to allow the originator to be an approver. So even though, let's say that the person handling AP can approve or simply move forward and save invoices if they're under a certain threshold. Maybe they're under $100, they don't need to submit them for approval, then you can mark this as well. Now, always require at least 1 approver. You can check that off as well as an alternate final approver. What this means is that if no one else is in the office and items are not being approved, then this would be the alternate. Now, I'm the only one actually set up here. As you can see, I'm a very popular person in the system. But obviously, you would have different individuals approving each step of the way. But I'm a one-woman show today, so I'm just that's why my name appears everywhere. Now you can also set, and I'll show you when we look at the steps a little bit closer, but you can set a time limit for an invoice to be sitting waiting for someone to approve it. And that's where you have this, when a task is overdue, what to do. So you can either take no action, let it sit there as long as it needs to, or you can go ahead and escalate it to the next approver. So you can set a next approver, or you can set who it's going to be escalated to. That way, if someone's on vacation, if they went home sick, whatever the case may be, and that needs to be approved, it will move on once the time limit is set. Now, where you set the time limit and all this other fun stuff I'm talking about is that when you go into the step, you can double-click on that, and this window pops up, which is where I actually define that step. I give it a description. I say whether it's an approval or a task step, and essentially here I think conditions are required for this approval. In this case I said the action is always required for this step. Otherwise I can set a condition, and I'll show you an example of that with the final approval step. And I've assigned this to myself. Now I can assign multiple people. So let's say that you have an invoice for the sales department, and 2 or 3 different salespeople are in that department, and any one of them can approve invoices that come into that department. You can list as many individuals as you like. Now I have a time limit set, so if you want to submit an invoice but you want it approved within 2 hours or whatever the case may be, you can change this to whatever you'd like. So you have the option of doing it within days or weeks or whatever. Now, this is Apply Workflow Calendar. Basically, you can have a calendar so that you can set up, for this 8-hour time frame to to only be weekdays or to skip holidays and so forth. And that's somewhere else. I won't show you that today, but just so you know that is available. Now here where it says message, you can actually define your own message. So depending on who it's going to, you may want the message to look differently. Now I'm just going to click on here just to show you very quickly. And when you log in, you actually need to log into your email for this send message to come up. And let's just be a moment. So what that window is going to show me while it's coming up is essentially the system is going to have an email body that's already been created that has links to the transaction. So this is straight out of the box. It says this is the body of the email itself, and it's going to say you've been assigned a task for the window, workflow step, whatever. So it's actually going to insert the name of the workflow in there and so forth, and then it's going to insert the voucher number for the document, and then it'll have the body, which has all the information for the specific invoice that you're submitting. Now, if you want to make this a little nicer, a little bit more personal, whatever it is that you'd like to do, you can basically just come in here and just change it around a little bit. So you don't need to stick to this robot-like email. So it does let you change that. And here you'll see it says include document attachments document. What that is that if you attach a document to, if you have scanned in a copy of the invoice and you choose to attach that to your invoice, it will come through in the email. And I'll show you what that looks like. Completion policy, you can set it so that only one person needs to approve it. You may want, if you've chosen 2 or 3 people, the majority must approve it, or everyone must approve it. Again, this is in the event that there's an invoice that, it's going where multiple people can possibly approve it. It gives you the option of selecting just one of them or everyone. So let me show you the second step that I have here. And this one, I actually set up a condition where I said, send it to this person where the PM transaction work document amount is greater than $5,000. So if the invoice I submit is over $5,000, it will automatically send it to that final approver after it's been approved the first time. Okay, so that's basically what the workflow looks like. As I mentioned to my clients, there are a lot of windows where you can kind of cheat off of an existing one. So if you look at, there isn't one in your system now, but basically if you kind of come back to this recording or take screenshots of it, you would be able to, once one workflow is set up, or if you wanted to set up a workflow for you, we could set one up, and then you can kind of follow the steps and see what's required and what's not to create your own workflows moving forward and to change some of the things around. So I'm going to go ahead and save that workflow for you. I'm going to close that out, and I am going to go to my payables transaction window and create an invoice. So I am going to say demo invoice. Let's see who we send it to. It was, say it's for auto financing, just add something different. Add my batch real quick here. And demo 9 document. And I'm going to make this for $6,000, just so that it exceeds that first step and we see that second step come through. And I believe my distributions are good. Yep. So if you notice here at the top, because I have a workflow that is active, and I didn't mention that, but next to the set up the workflow, there is a checkbox where you can check off and actually activate or inactivate your workflow at any time. Now once it is active, you'll see whenever you open the payable transaction entry window, you'll see this little bar and it'll say what the status of it is. So it says it's not submitted. You'll also see the section here where you can submit and view the history for it. You can also attach. So I'm going to go ahead and attach and this is not part of the workflow. You have this option to attach documents to your transaction. So I'm going to go ahead and click attach, and it will save my transaction. Come into this window at the very bottom. I'm going to click on attach, and I have this folder where I've added scanned copies of invoices, and you can have your scanner set up to go into this folder. And I'm just going to grab that one. I'm not sure what that is. I want to confirm. I can click preview, and here's the invoice. So at any time when I come into this transaction, I would be able to see that copy of the invoice. I don't have to go searching in the files. And now that I've attached it, you'll notice it's no longer a big paper clip. It just says attach. And I'm going to go ahead and click submit. I'm going to have a message here that says, please approve this ASAP. And this comment will come through as well. And I'm going to click submit. I'm going to check my emails. It may take a moment or so for the email to come through. So while it does, let me just give it a moment. Actually, it came a lot faster than I thought. So here's the email that I just received as the approver. And as you can see, it has my sample invoice attached, so I can take a look at it. The header was, you have an assigned, you have a task assignment for payables invoice 476. And that is the voucher number. And as you saw, that is something that you can change and actually make it the invoice number or change it to the vendor or whatever it is that you'd like. It tells me that it's been assigned to me. It says it's task deadline, and it tells me everything I need to know about that invoice right there. It says it's a $6,000 invoice. This is the document number, who the vendor is, and so forth. They'll also have a comment down here. They'll say, please approve this ASAP. And there is a link here so that I can edit or view the document, and it'll bring me directly into, click on that. And it actually brought me back to that window. So the individual who receives this email would need to be a GP user in order for the window to pop up. However, like I mentioned before, there is a setting where you can have the approval on the email so that they wouldn't have to come into GP. So I'm going to go ahead and close that out. Now, as the first approval, in this case it says it's pending my approval, I'm going to go ahead and come here to workflow, and I can approve, reject, or delegate, meaning I can send it off to someone else. So I'm going to go ahead and approve it. When I do so, I'll be able to add another comment, but I'm just going to go ahead and click approve. You don't need a comment this time. Now, I should be receiving another email in a moment telling me that I am the final approver, and I happen to have an invoice for me to approve. So we'll see that in just a second. And actually, that was quicker than I expected. So here it is, and it's telling me that as the final approval step, I have an invoice. And at the same time, this was another email that I just received as the submitter telling me that I have approved it. Excuse me. So this email is telling me that as a final approval person, I have this invoice. I'm going to click on my link. It's going to open up the window for that invoice. Now, if you notice up on top, it says view history. I can actually view the history for this document, and it's going to show me who submitted it as soon as it refreshes here, and who's approved it, and if there have been any comments along the way. So here is the workflow originated by me when it was submitted. The first approval, it'll say that it was submitted to me, and it'll say and that it was approved. And any comment would show up here. And this will, and then it'll show me that it's at the final approval state assigned to me and that it's pending approval. So I'm just going to go ahead and approve. Now, what's going to happen, just so that you know, is that while this document is in process, while it's being approved or waiting for approval, it will not be, you will not be able to post it. So that's what it'll do. It'll be in the system, it'll be recorded. If you run a report that shows your open payables or the unposted open payables, it will show up. You will see all these invoices in the system. However, it's not posted until it has actually been approved. So that's just so you know. If you set up a workflow for new vendors that require approval, then anyone can go ahead and enter in a vendor, maybe a new vendor. They may have received an invoice for a new vendor. They can go ahead and enter all the information for that vendor. However, you would not be able to use that vendor or enter an invoice or do anything with that vendor until it has been approved. Okay, so that is your workflow. As you can see, it's not that difficult to set up once you know what you're doing, of course, but if you follow a few steps, you saw it's not really that difficult. And again, once you have one set up, it should be pretty easy to follow to create additional ones. So for those of you using the web client for GP, there are a few enhancements to it as well. The first one is the addition of invoicing. So for those of you who use the invoice module, that module is now available in the web client. Now, just so you know, there is in the sales module, there is sales order processing and invoicing. There are different, that's different functionality. So it's invoicing that is now available. Now, Canadian payroll is also available in the web client now. So for those of you who use payroll, the payroll modules, and happen to have Canadian payroll, that's available. Business intelligence, and there's a couple of enhancements in this area that are pretty cool. One is that there is an enhancement to the business analyzer. Now, there are now apps available for both Apple and Android platforms, as well as content improvements. Additionally, support is now available for management reporter content. Now, unfortunately, I can't show you my iPad to show you how this works, but here's a snapshot of what that analyzer looks like. As you can see, you can actually see some dashboards and so forth right on these mobile devices. Now, if you're not using the business analyzer and you kind of like the idea of having dashboards, GP has actually included a few new Excel refreshable reports. One of them, some of them being the dashboards that are available in the different modules, and I'm going to show you that in just a couple of minutes. So these dashboards are already available, and actually let me show you very quickly. So when you come into GP, then you can reach your Excel refreshables. For those of you who are already using them, they are saved. Excuse me. They are saved in your system when we deploy them out of GP when GP is installed. But you can reach them from within GP in any of the modules. You'll see Excel reports, and you'll see a list of those Excel refreshable reports. So, like I said, there are a few more than there were before in this latest R2 release. Now, if I want to see the dashboard, here is dashboard report. Now, all I did was filter up here at the top. Now, when I open that, this dashboard is already part of GP or is included. And what this is basically there's just a whole bunch of Excel refreshable reports. Now, what Excel refreshable means, for those of you who are not quite familiar with them, is basically just data that's being updated or grabbed directly from the GP tables. So you don't have to log into GP to see this information. It can be updated continuously. There is an option to update it every 5 minutes, every hour, or first to just continue updating continuously. So however often, or just as you open it, it will update automatically. So as you see, this is items, order point quantities. So it's actually set with different colors, so it's easy to see what's what. requisitions ready for purchase. There's nothing there. So there's all these, all of this information right in Excel, and because it's in Excel, then you're able to set up pivot tables and charts and so forth, and that's what this dashboard is. It's basically just linked to those details in the other tabs. Now, if you are to mark any of these, like you want to see what the late shipments are, you can click on that. It's actually going to jump into this window, and that way you can see exactly which ones are out, or past due. So it is a pretty cool tool that's out there. Now, if you find that this dashboard doesn't really fit your needs, that's fine. Like I said, these are simply just different graphs and stuff and things that are feeding directly from these other tabs. So you can make it look and actually show you whatever data you actually want. And so this is really an example of what you can do with the Excel refreshables. So I'm not going to save that. Then we have the Smart List Designer. Now, Smart List Designer has been available for a little bit, and if you have when you open Smart List, you'll see that there is a new button up at the upper left, and what that is it's a Smart List Designer, and it lets you create your very own Smart List. Now, it can be a little bit complicated to set up, but there are some shortcuts that just about anybody can do it, and that's what I'm going to show you. So I'm going to go back into GP, going to look at Smart List. Again, when I go into Smart List, I can click New. And if you notice here, this is pretty much every module and every option that you have in GP. And if I come into GP, I have different tables. So as you can see, this is just a list of the actual modules you have here in Smart List. And I can click on any one of them. And so what I'm going to see is actually a list of the tables that are in GP. Okay, now if I want to have information from more than one table, I actually have to select different ones and set up a relationship. However, there are views that are preset that actually take information from different tables, so you don't have to be a programmer to set it up. And those views are actually all the way at the bottom, so you can basically open up the Smart List Designer, come to the bottom where it says Views, click on Company, give it a moment, and it's going to list all the views. Now, some of them have names that are not very descriptive. However, there are some, clicked a little bit too much. You see there's accounts, account summary, account transactions, and there's all this that it's not really that easy to understand. But there are quite a few that have regular names. So your fixed asset depreciation, your fixed asset purchases, all of these. Now I am going to make myself a list using one of these views of customers. Okay, so this is actually going to be comprised, you notice there's customer address. It's going to be comprised of that customer address and the customer and a whole bunch of other information. So these views, you don't have to do any relationships. It has a lot of the information that you would want for that customer. So for my list, I actually want a list, a Smart List, my very own Smart List that has my customer name, or rather the customer number, the name, and I want to see all of the customers that are in the state of Florida. So I'm going to say I want to see city, state, and customer name. So these are going to be the fields in my report. Now, if I choose to filter, maybe I want only the ones in Florida. So I'm going to come down here and say filter. I want to filter by state, and is FL. And if I'm wondering what that's going to look like, I can come up here at the very top and it says execute query. And it's going to show me the list. And apparently I have no customers in Florida. I'm going to remove the filter. I want to delete the filter, yes. And let me execute the query again. There we go. So we do have quite a few, just not enough in Florida. We need to have some in Illinois. So let me just do that. State is IL. Execute that again, and now I see only the ones for Illinois. So now I can just go ahead and click OK. I forgot the name. Sorry about that. So I want to name it. I'm going to say I want all my customers in Illinois. And I want to see it out of this list here. I want to see it under sales. So I'm going to change the series to sales. I'm going to click OK. And see changes. Yes. Anything before you save the list. And that was unique, customers in Illinois. So now I can come into my smart list and actually see that. Now, let's say that I want to see this in Excel, or I want somebody else to be able to open it up in Excel at any time. I can actually publish it. Now, this publish button is only available to those smart lists that you create yourself. But when I publish it, Excel report published successfully. That's good to hear. So now I can go ahead and close my smart list. Now I can just still open. Why doesn't it like the name? I think I just hit save more than once. That's why it's not going to discard that. Okay, so I had hit save twice, and that's why it was still coming up. So if I come in here, I'm just going to say, well, this is where I am, is in the purchasing module. I'm looking at the Excel reports list. And I'm actually going to come up here at the very top. I'm going to refresh it so that I can see the one that I just created. It should be listed here because it did say that it published. Oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm looking at purchasing, especially in sales. Sorry about that. I'm clicking Excel report. Here's my list of reports, and here is my customers in Illinois. And my Excel spreadsheet opened up over here. I'm going to enable content. And here's my list of the customer number, the name, the city, and the state that they're in. And if I come up here to data, refresh, I can actually refresh this as many times as I need to. So if I have this open in the morning and I want to check it at any time during the day, again, like I mentioned, you can have it set up to refresh automatically every minute, every hour, however often I like it to. Otherwise, anytime I open it, it will refresh automatically. Or I could just click on refresh, and it'll refresh it. So that shows you how to, so I just showed you how to create a workflow. I'm sorry, a smart list builder report, and then how you can create a free Excel refreshable from it. All right, so that's the smart list builder. Now let's go back to our demo. Now the next thing is financials. Now for the typical user, I think some of the enhancements in the financial module are probably some of the features that you'll appreciate the most on a regular basis. The first thing is intercompany. There's some changes to, for those of you who use GP intercompany, you're going to appreciate these enhancements. You can now make inquiries in one company to see the actual corresponding journal entries recorded in the other company when you've posted intercompany transactions without having to log in and out of the company. So I know that's pretty big. Having been a user years ago using intercompany, this was a biggie. Not having to log in and out of the company to see the transactions on the other side is really useful. The other enhancement, and that's one that everyone who's ever had to void an intercompany AP transaction can definitely appreciate, is that in the past, if you voided an intercompany AP transaction in one company, it would not post the void in the other company. So you had to log into the other company and basically void it out there. Now you can void an intercompany AP transaction. However, it will automatically generate the reversing transaction in the corresponding company. So that is a pretty cool enhancement for those of you who use intercompany. Now, copy and paste from Excel. The other feature that many of my clients have been happy to finally see in GB is the ability to copy details out of Excel and actually drop them into a journal entry. So this is huge if you don't use Integration Manager or Smart Connect, and actually type in your journal entries, your very long, maybe payroll journal entries every month, and you're sitting there for quite a while entering all that information. Well, now you can have an Excel spreadsheet, have all your details in there, and then just drop it into the journal entry. Now, the question always comes up, is this available in all the modules? Unfortunately, no. So if you have a lot of distributions to enter in AP or in sales, you're not able to copy and paste at this time. I'm sure that's one of those enhancements that they're working on for the future. But at least you can do it in the journal entries. One of the options that I typically suggest to clients is that they use maybe like an accrual account or a clearing type account. So if you do have a very long entry for an AP transaction, such as an expense report or something of that nature, or an Amex statement that has a lot of details, then maybe you just put it into a clearing account, you come into the journal entry window, and then drop all your details in here. So that's an option. So I'll show you how this works, because I know this is something that a lot of people can make use of. So I'm going to go into GP, I'm going to go into Financial, select General to create a journal entry, and I am going to create a batch for advertising. The reference is going to be advertising expense. And if I come into Excel, I already have this set up. Now, this is the way that you need to set up your details. There needs to be the description, which is going to wind up in the reference field, the account number, your debit, and your credit. Now, you're going to copy the body, not the headers. So you can do Control-C or simply copy. Then you're going to come over here and place your cursor at the very beginning. Now, if your cursor is anywhere else, when you click paste up on top here, it could cause some issues and it's not very pretty. So make sure that you're ready to start entering your account number when you do your copy, and then you hit paste. So here's what I had in Excel, and I can expand this and see the account number, the debit and credit, and here's my distribution reference. So pretty simple. Going to save a lot of time for some people. So that is definitely nice to see in GP now. Now, another nice feature that is available now is the ability to see both historical and current year lookups in the same window. So in the past, if you needed to find a transaction for a payment that was made or something of that nature, if you were looking through the GL, you didn't know when an accrual was made or whatever it was, you actually had to go in, and if you weren't sure if it was last year, 2 years ago, or earlier this year, you would have to go into the detail or summary inquiry window for either historical or open. Now there's only one window for detail or inquiry or summary. But if you see the years, you'll see all of your years, the current, future, as well as any historical years. So that's, I know that, helping clients find things, and having looked in the past, I know that was a little bit painful to do, especially if you hadn't closed out the year yet, or if you were looking at historical transactions and you needed to go back and see, there was a payment and you didn't know how far back you had been making those payments. You don't have to go to the two windows, just this one window will do now. Auto deposit of cash receipts. What this is that for some clients who have a large number of credit card deposits, let's say, or credit card receipts, you would actually, in the past, if you had them integrate into GP or if you entered them manually, since you have a deposit show up, a separate deposit show up in your bank statement for each and every transaction. You would have to enter that cash receipt and then create a deposit for the same one, for that same entry, one by one. So it was dual entry. Now you have the ability to turn on auto deposit, and basically anytime you have a cash receipt, it'll automatically create a bank deposit for you. So the way you would turn that on, and again, it's one of those features you need to turn on, is that you're going to go into company setup, and this would be your administrator who would do this, and you would click at the very bottom where it says, the very bottom of the list of options, and it says automatically post cash receipt deposit. Now, if you happen to have cash receipts that you don't want an individual deposit for, instead you're going to take a batch to the bank, then in that case you would need to turn this off. But if you have thousands of credit card transactions versus 2 or 3 checks or one to the bank together, having this option turned on will be definitely beneficial for you. Now, another feature that some of my clients have appreciated is the ability to create enhanced payment terms. Now you have the ability to create payment terms with a due date option using the transaction date. You can add days to the due date. You have the additional due date and discount options, and options such as next month, the ability to select a specific day of the month for a due date and so forth. So in the past, if you had an invoice that was always due on the 1st of the month, you couldn't really take the 1st of the month. You couldn't say day 1 or day 2 or whatever it was. You had to choose, net 30 or whatever the case may be. So that's basically one of those enhancements that is available now. Fixed asset year-end close report, or a couple of reports. Now, so when you close out your year and print a status report of all your assets, all the assets are being affected by the close will be on that report. And the report prints the year-to-date depreciation, cost basis, accumulated depreciation, net book, and more information regarding your assets. Now, in the past, also, you couldn't necessarily run a year-end close report for previous years. It was a little tricky to get that, so that report is also available. All right, so distribution. Under distribution, some of the enhancements are the ability to edit emails for historical documents. Now, an example of this enhancement is that in the past, if a vendor requested to see a check remittance, you'd have to search in your files and scan your copy if you kept one, and then email it to them. Now GP can recreate those remittances for you so that you can simply email them from GP. So you do need to set up, make sure that you have the email address for the client in there if you are going to be emailing it out. And you do have an option when you are in the transaction window to reprint the remittances. Payables warning when you have an open PO. Now, this can be pretty beneficial. If you are using, most clients, most companies may have POs, but at the same time, they may not have a PO for everything. So they may get an invoice from a vendor that they have POs for, but they're not sure whether or not an invoice has one or not. So what this does is that if you're entering a payable transaction, AGP, if you happen to have a PO, it will alert you so that you don't enter it and then wind up with an open PO that you can't match. So let me show you how that works. I'm going to come into GP and I'm going to go into purchasing, open up my payable transaction window, and I am going to say this is let's say a trip. So I'm going to use Ace Travel. Stick it into my demo 9, choose Ace Travel, enter document number and amount. Now, when I hit save, it is going to say the vendor has an existing purchase order, because I do happen to have a purchase order for a travel company. Choose to continue to post or save, or choose Go to close the window and view the purchasing navigation list. So it's not going to save it. If I click Go to, if I choose Go to, if I choose Continue, I'm just going to continue. If I choose Go to, it's actually going to open up this other window, which is going to show me any open POs that I have to that vendor. So instantly I can actually check to see what's going on. So it has POs, it has receipts, invoices, and so forth. So I could actually go ahead and look at the PO and take a look and see what it is that that I already have a PO for. So I can determine whether I actually want to continue with that payables transaction or not. So this is actually pretty cool, because I know there have been confusion where you have a lot of open POs, and it's basically you have those open POs because you didn't realize that there was a PO at the time. So another cool feature, this is actually the very last one that I'm going to show you today, and that is the all-in-one view feature. Now, if I go into vendors, and actually this is going to be accessible for you for the vendor maintenance window and many other purchasing windows, as well as the navigation list and the home page. But if I go into the vendor, for example, and I'm going to select Advanced, up here at the very top, you see there's an all-in-one view button. If I click on that, I can actually see everything that, all the transactions for that vendor all in one screen. Well, I'll need to scroll down if there's more, but basically a lot of information is there. Now, if I have this PO, and I'm wondering whether we ever received the stuff, if we ever paid it, what happened with this PO, I can click on the PO, and it's going to filter every other line. So if you notice, this is purchase orders, receipts, invoices, payments, returns. So because I filtered, I checked off this particular PO, it's showing me the receipts that I had for this merchandise that was on that PO, any invoices paid, and the payments. And of course, I can click on any of these. Oops, of course, it doesn't work now. This is my demo environment. Some things just aren't set up all the way. So excuse me for that. But basically, I can obviously click on it and see the actual transaction. So this is pretty cool, so that you don't have to go and click on a whole bunch of places to find out the history of that PO. You can see it all the way through. So this actually concludes my demo today. I hope you found it useful. If you have any questions, if there's anything that you'd like additional information on, please don't hesitate to give us a call or just email us, and we'd be happy to show you a little bit more about some of these additional features. So please don't hesitate to contact us, and have a great day.